Good morning, sir. I am Cadet Calamba Edison, and this time I will be reporting about the factors leading to global food security and the state of the Philippines of our country in terms of global food security during pandemic times. So first, let us define what is food security all about. So, food security, as defined by the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, it means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious foods that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. So, in simpler terms, food security is basically the availability of sufficient and safe nutritious foods which corresponds to a healthy life. Moving on our topic, the factors that leads to global food security. So, there are multiple factors that are responsible for food insecurity worldwide, including such as population growth, climate change, increasing cost of food, unemployment, poverty, and loss of biodiversity. Also, the inclusions of urbanization and industrialization, land use shifts and water scarcity, income growth and nutritional trends, and trends in global energy supply and food trade. According to statistics, in Southeast Asia alone, women of reproductive ages and children are most vulnerable to food insecurity. Also, the physical factors plays key role of it, such as climate, soil quality and gradient, and human factors which are the technologies. All of these have historically controlled the quantity and type of food produced in any locations of the world. So next is what is the state of the Philippines in terms of food security amidst in pandemic times. So according to Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III, he said that Philippines has been handling the COVID-19 crisis with strength and food security front. It means that the Philippines has been well and good situation in food security during pandemic times, as the Duterte administration introduced the game-changing reforms over the last 4 years that boosted the productivity and enhanced the resiliency of the country's agricultural sector ahead of the pandemic. He added that among these reforms under President Duterte, decisive leadership is the rice tariffication law. So what is the rice tariffication law or RTL? So RTL mean or the rice tariffication law is an act of liberalizing the importation, exportation, and trading of rice, with lifting for the purpose for the quantitative import restriction on rice and for other purposes for the good benefit. So this RTL has set in place a liberalized rice trading regime that lead to an adequate supply and cheaper retail prices for the food staple despite the mobility restrictions that the government implement since March to curb the COVID-19. To ensure food security over the long run, Secretary Dominguez said that Philippine government is turning the COVID-induced health emergency into an opportunity to rapidly digitize its agricultural systems and mechanize farm production, and these twin measures will expand market access for food producers while keeping food supply available and prices affordable. So overall, the situation of global food security in the Philippines is in well and good hands.
Good day, sir. My name is Vince Sarko, and I'm going to report about what are the threats in the global food security. So, the world is facing a crisis in global food security as the global population increases, and diets change with economic development. The population is increasing, meaning more mouths to feed, and it is unlikely that this will stabilize by the end of the century. Example of the country that experience threat to food security is in the Philippines. The biggest challenge to accessing food in the Philippines is the lack of income due to the unemployment. There are many threats in the food security that the people are facing right now. Climate change is one of the threats that globally that people in some countries experience. Climate change affects food production and availability, access quality, utilization, and stability of food systems. In short, it impacts all aspects of the food system, and extreme weather related disasters are increasing and reduce the yields of major crops. Higher level of CO2 reduce the nutritional value of crops. So these are some of the following global threats to the food security that people around the world are experiencing right now. So first is the drought. So the demand for the water for human use and to grow crops are increasing, but changing weather patterns because of the global warming means we can't rely on enough rain falling when we need it. So this type of threat changes the lives of the people, especially the farmers, because it damages their agriculture. So next is the emerging diseases. Anything which causes disease, such as virus, bacterium, or fungi have always been a feature of agriculture, and there are a number of current causes for concern. For example, a wheat rust fungus that carrying varieties have no resistance to is spreading from Africa to the Middle East. So next type of threat is the salty soils. Water used for irrigation is impure H2O and often it contains minerals including sodium and calcium salts. When a crop takes up the water, these substances are left behind in the soil. Just as mineral impurities in tap water cause your kettle to fire up, salts accumulated in soil now affect crop yields in many parts of the world. So that is just all. There are so many threats to global food security around the world, but that is just some of the threats that I mentioned. That is all. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Martin A. Gudinis and I'm here to continue the report, the 5 components of food security. So the fourth one is stability. Stability describes the temporal dimension of food and nutrition security, respectively the time frame over which food and nutrition security is being considered. Stability is given when the supply on household level remains constant during the year and the long term. That includes food, income, and economic resources. Furthermore, it is important to minimize external risks such as natural disasters and climate change, price volatility, conflicts, or epidemics through activities and implementations improving the resilience of households. Such measures include insurance, example given, against drought and crop failure, as well as the protection of the environment and the sustainable uses of natural resources and land, like land, soil, and water. So stability is a food secure. A population, household, or individual must have access to adequate food at all times. They should not risk losing access to food as a consequence of sudden shocks like economic or climate crisis or seasonal food security. So the fifth one is the acceptability. So the acceptability access to cultural acceptable food, which is produced and obtained in a ways that do not compromise people's dignity. Self-respect or human rights acceptability is often called forth as a necessary component of food security, or fifth. Yet, there is a lack of guidance in literature and policy as to how to operationalize this concept. Without specifying what cultural acceptability means, the concept risks becoming watered down, discounted, or obsolete in practice. This review strives to speak to those gaps by cataloging the connotations and implications of cultural acceptability in literature on urban food policy, food security, and associated topics. So that's all for the 5 components of food security.
Good morning everyone, I am Seymour A. Virtudes and I will be going to discuss about what are the 5 components of food security. Now first is the availability refers to the physical existence of food. On national level, food availability is combination of domestic food production, commercial food imports and exports, food aid and domestic food stocks, and on household levels, food could be from own production or brought from the store or local markets. Regarding for food production, water resources are required to produce the crops. Due to the population growth and climate change, the pressure of existing natural resources, namely land, water, increases. Now, number two is the access. Access is ensured when all households have enough resources to obtain food in sufficient quantity, quality, and diversity for nutritious diet. This depends mainly on the amount of household resources and on its prices. In addition, accessibility is also a question of physical, social, and policy environment. Drastically changes in this dimension mainly seriously disrupt production strategies and threaten food access of affected households. Now, next is number 3. Uses describes the socio-economic aspects of household food and nutrition security determined by knowledge and habits. Assuming that nutritious food is available and accessible, the household has to decide what food to purchase and how to prepare it as well as to consume it and allocate it within the household. Another aspect is biological utilization. Now, this relates to the ability of the human body to take food and convert it. Now, the next two components will be reported by my co-group mate, Kenneth Godinez. So that will be all. Thank you.
Hi sir, I'm Cadet Terante Manuel and my topic is food security possible. Food security is a measure of availability of food and individuals' ability to access it. So food security is defined as the means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and their needs for an active and healthy life. Food security is possible when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. All members in a family or in society must be at all times have access to enough food for an active, healthy life. Individuals who are food secure that do not live in hunger or fear of starvation, on the other hand, is defined by the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, as a situation of limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods or limited or uncertain availability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways. So that's all.
In continuation with number 4 is food security possible. But before I start, I am Cadet John Christian Villazorda, and I am going to continue the report of my groupmate Terante. Well, first of all, food security in community depends on 3 main pillars: the food availability, the food access, food utilization. The food availability means that enough food is physically present for the entire population. It is in the markets, shops, and farms or home gardens. Food access means that individuals can obtain available food. Households may access food in many ways: growing, buying, bartering, or through gift, welfare program, or food aid. Food access is ensured when households have enough resources like land, money, or social connections to obtain nutritious foods and adequate amounts. Food utilization refers to the way people's bodies are able to use the food they ate. Making the best use of foods depends on proper food storage and processing. Overall, nutrition and health status, the availability of clean drinking water, and adequate health and sanitation services. Food security in a community exists when all people at all times have both physical and economic access to sufficient food and meet their dietary needs for productive and healthy lives. So that is all for our report. And once again, we are the group 4, and that is all. Thank you.